No, I think that's it. Thanks, Meg. I'm so excited to be back in Power to Fly. I love these events so very much. So very
Me
much.
too. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. I know that this is going to be maybe an unpopular hot take, but networking events can often feel like a chore, even for people like me who get paid to network. And I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people, but it can still feel like a bit of a slog sometimes. How can people transform these moments for connection into these to have a real fun and meaningful connection as opposed to, oh hi, here's my two truths and a lie, and that's what you have to know about me today. Like, what should people be doing, or how can they take these moments and make them more fun?
Yeah, Meg, that's a great question. And I think what I want to start with actually is sort of like that's not the only thing that networking is, right? I think one of the reasons why when I talk about networking, people's shoulders often slump and they, get that glassy look in their face because they're like, oh, like I have to do that. And part of it is because they think of networking as like walking into a room full of people they've never met before and like trying to get hundreds of business cards. And that's not, I don't know what that is. That's not networking. I don't know what that is, right?
Yeah.
And networking is connecting. Networking is like having lunch with a former colleague. Networking is answering a question on a LinkedIn forum or asking a question on a LinkedIn forum or in a Facebook group, right? Following up with somebody who answered your question and emailing them and thanking them and asking them for more advice, right? It's, hanging out on the soccer field with the other parents and saying, hey, what do you do? Oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about it? Right. So it's human connection is what we're looking for here, right? And then like, hooray, now you're networking, right? Like now you're networking. And I think that if you think about networking more expansively and think about it as opportunities to connect and to learn about cool organizations, cool things to do, right? Jobs that might be are open. Like if you think about it as a knowledge transfer, right? You and another human making a connection and transferring knowledge. I think that just changed the whole way you think about it. And then coming back to our networking event, now you can even look at that in a different light because it's not about like collecting 100 business cards. Who cares? That's not a good goal. If you like that, great, have fun. Um,
It seems like Pokemon hunting. You know what I
like
mean? Like it
yes,
doesn't
it's like a yes, it's like Meg, that's good. That's like
like
it's for us
well because
adults.
you're
We can get our little trading cards.
oh,
But it's you can if you think about it more from a connection standpoint, even those networking events, you can think about like, particularly for the more introverted people, like I want to meet two people and I want to have a real conversation with them. What are some questions that I want to ask? What do I want to talk about? What about myself, right? Like practicing those elevator pitches and things like that, but not in a fake like what is it that you're going to want to come away from this event having learned? And what are some things that's like you're passionate about right now that you want to talk about? And when you think about it from the perspective of connection, I think it makes it a little bit easier.
mhm. Yeah, I like that idea a lot. And you're right. I mean, a lot of times when we talk about networking, it feels very transactional and it feels very
Yeah.
one directional, right? This
Yeah.
idea of like, oh great, we've done the thing. Now you know me and I know you, and then we'll just keep on going with that. And it strikes me as kind of things worth doing, or not necessarily things that like things that are worth doing are a little bit harder, but it's like if it's that easy and that like simple, then like what are you going to get from that? You know what I mean? Like where's the value really going to come? um all right, let's talk to the people who are already not really listening to us, okay? For people who very much do not like networking, they're highly introverted, or just events are like, networking events are very hard for them. Are there any other ways to meet and connect with people that you suggest?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, if you are a highly introverted person, I would say like don't bother with events. It's not going to work for you, right? And it's actually going to create the shame spiral of like I'm not good at this, right? You're going to keep telling
Like
yourself
putting
a
yourself in,
story,
yeah,
right? That
yeah.
I'm not good at this. So what you want to think about, first of all, we live in an amazing age, and I actually think the ability to connect online is actually right quite powerful. You can find great networking groups, right? Great like groups that are focused on um, different kinds of industries, different kinds of interests. On Facebook, on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn group, some of them are good, some of them it's tricky. Facebook has some amazing groups, and it's Facebook, so you got to think about that. But like Substack, I'm on
Reddit has
Substack, right?
yeah, there's
There's
yeah.
some amazing, amazing communities. I think we think of it as a newsletter company, and it does that really great. And those of us who are on it, like, publish our newsletters. But it has a chat function, and there's all these great communities where people are talking and having comments, right? It's like old school blogging to me. Like, I remember, like, back when it was like
Yes.
cool to blog. It's like we brought that back. But find those spaces, and you can ask questions, you can answer questions, right? And those are great ways to get to know people. And you can also, I think, networking isn't just about meeting new people. Like, meeting new people is great and expanding your network is great. Networking is also about connecting with the people that you already know, right? So another answer to the I'm quite introverted is like, start with who you already know, right? Reach out to former colleagues, ask them to have coffee, ask them to have lunch, ask them to have a Zoom, and reconnect and connect with people that you already know, that you've worked with before, that you've had, that maybe old clients, right? Different people that you've had partnerships with, to, what have you been up to? Here's what I've been up to. Here's what I'm looking to do. What kinds of things are you interested in doing? That's going to be much more relational, right? Not transactional, Meg, to your point. But also, like, talking to people you already know, that's networking. Talking to people you already know is networking. If you would remember nothing else today, talking to people you already know is networking. Huzzah,
Love
you did it.
Yes, yes. All right. Okay. So let's throw another wrench into this
Yeah,
this issue or this problem here. Let's say I'm trying to pivot into a new industry. I've
yeah,
done this 3 times in my career so far.
me too.
And I fully recognize where this person's coming from, but I don't know anyone in this new field.
Yeah.
We'll say I'm going to go into a career as a circus worker. Okay. How do I start a network from scratch? I know no one who works in the circus. I know no one who's ever seen a circus. How do I start my network?
Yeah, so the first thing, again, I feel like I need to burst bubbles here, right? Like, there is no such thing as starting a new network from scratch. That's not a thing. You have a network, right? Unless you're like a new grad, and I think that's another summit you all do. So we'll talk about that later, right? Like,
Your parents know people, so
and your
you
parents know
you
people, right?
know,
No one's
yeah.
starting from scratch. There's no such thing as starting from scratch. You have a network, right? What you need to do is expand the network. So you need to start with the people you already know. And this is where LinkedIn is super, super helpful, right? So make sure you're connected to everyone you've ever worked with, everyone you've ever, right? Like, and again, people miss the opportunity to connect with people in their communities, right? Do you go to a church, a mosque, a synagogue? Do you, even if it's only a couple times a year, it's okay. They don't, it's fine. You can still hang out with those people.
They don't
Um,
ask for receipts saying you
they
went like
don't.
on a
Well, some of
non-high
them do,
holy
but
day.
it's
Like
okay. It's okay. The people at your kid's school, right? Like, the folks in your community, right? Outside of the things you do at work, right? So
Mhm.
connect with all of those people on LinkedIn and look and see where they worked and who they're connected to, right?
Yeah.
And the more that you grow your connections with the people that you already know, or at least have some connection to, you'll quickly see when you start to search for the people in the new industry that you want, like, oh, I'm 1 degree from that person, I'm 2 degree from that person, right? And the
Yeah.
wider your circle is to start, the more likely, right? We are all 7 degrees or 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon now, like, completely, right? And then once you've made a couple connections to people in that new industry, then the world opens up to you, because you can ask them, like, you immediately link in with them, and, hey, can you introduce me to this person now, and can you introduce me to that person? And you think about it as like concentric circles, right? Like, you expand and expand. So I did this when I had spent more than a decade doing tech, PR, marketing, corporate marketing, branding, all of that, and started a nonprofit. And I had no nonprofit experience. There were a few people on my board that were in the nonprofit world or had some nonprofit connections, but they were mostly corporate people, right? There was not, and it just started with a couple connections. Like, hey, talk to this one person that I know, right? And I talked to that one person. They're like, okay, I'm connected with them. And then, oh, hey, can you connect me to this person? And I would say within about 6, 7 months, I had a really big network of people, who were, at foundations, at other nonprofits, other executive directors. But it was all starting with people that I already knew and that other people in my network already knew. So they are closer than you think they are. They really are. Look, it can work to cold email people, right? Like that is a strategy, just like walking into the big, conference center and trying to get 100 business cards, like sending emails to 100 people and asking if they'll meet with you or have coffee with you. I mean, I'm not going to say that never works. I just think it's much more efficient to start with the people you already know and move out from there. And you will
Somewhere
probably,
my dad is like cheering because you're validating his whole just go there. Just show up and say hi.
and
Like,
yeah, and
yeah,
well,
okay, it could work, but let's work
so
smarter, not harder.
work smarter, not harder. And actually, this is where I would come back to the idea of events. I think where events can be helpful is in breaking into a new industry. So if you can find a conference or a networking, a meetup or something like that, for the industry that you want to go in, that's it can be a relatively easy way for those of us who are a little bit more extroverted or able to bring out their extroversion tendencies for a night here and there or a day here and there, um, because again, you don't need that many connections. I want to underline that, right? You don't need that many to start to then build from there. So going to that kind of an event, or a few at the start of that journey, that pivot journey, will then open up a lot more opportunity for you to meet with other people.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that obviously, yes, like in-person events are probably kind of one of the faster ways to do this, but that, it's possible to do this in online or in a virtual setting as opposed to in person. Do you think that there is a secret sauce for getting to that level of to getting your relationships to go beyond just a basic LinkedIn connection?
So it helps well, again, I'm going to keep underlining the fact that like your network is the people you already know. So one way to build out those relationships is with people you've already had relationships with, people you've worked with before, right? And so having conversations with
Okay.
them, right, can be helpful. And by the
So
way,
like, and
depending
when you're
on
talking about the people you already know, like we're discussing like, hey, I'm going into this new area. Do you know anything about this area? So you're talking to the people you know, but you're trying to expand your knowledge of what they know.
you're trying to expand your knowledge, but also remember, like over the course of a career, people move too, right? You may have somebody that you worked with at a company who's now doing the thing that you want to be doing, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit of it depends on how. I actually just made a connection for someone relatively recently. So it was someone I had worked with at the marketing technology company, and he wanted to go into green tech. It's whatever, all the cool kids are doing that now. They're going into green tech.
Oh
And
yeah,
ironically,
so cool.
he was actually asking me to connect him to someone else who had worked at that same company, but before he was there, right? They hadn't, because I had been there for such a long time. I'm like the connector for all of the Return Path alums sometimes because like I was there for almost 20 years, so I was like kind of connected. So he's like, hey, could you, we worked at Return Path together, and you worked with Greg before. Can you connect us? Because I want to get into this new thing. And I was like, sure. And I did. And they were both in the same industry, and now they're both in the same new industry, right? So like again, these connections are not as far away as you think they are. So like focusing on the people and those, having those kinds of connections with people you've already worked with and you've had some, and those are going to be, you're going to have an easier time deepening those connections. And so that's where I think like if you really want to get, connected to people, thinking about how you can do that. You can do that with new connections as well, right? Like you can have lunch, you can have coffee. And then the other thing I would say to really kind of build a connection with someone is it helps to be helpful. People like people who are helpful. Like, hey, I saw this article and I thought of you. I saw this interesting, class that I'm thinking about taking in this subject that we're both interested in. I wanted to make sure you knew about it. And those kinds of, and certainly sharing opportunities with people. So one of the things I do,
Mhm.
when I'm looking for jobs, if I see a job that it's not right for me, but I know, like I'll email that. I email jobs to people all the time. Like I'm probably one of the best
Mhm.
sources for other people because like, and that's interesting, right? Like if you're connected to people who are also looking, you guys can be sources for each other because there's more stuff out there than any of us can find. So be helpful, right? People like people to be helpful.
I love that. Yeah. Ugh. Well, plus it makes you feel a lot less awkward, right? Like it makes the relationship for me at least, not feel transactional, especially when I know at some point I'm probably going to want something from this person or like need an introduction or,
Right.
ask them to do something for me. But it always makes me feel better to be like, oh, and I saw this and I thought of you. Like, and it's not in like a manipulative way necessarily. It's
No.
just that's like I pebble. That's what I do. Here, I thought of this, saw this, thought of you. Here you go. So like I'm able to
And
kind of like work that to my benefit. But yeah, it makes
and
being able to be
don't
helpful first feels a lot better.
and don't worry about how they're going to take it. Right? Some people might think
Yeah.
you're being right. Who keep it moving. Right? The other thing I would say is
Yeah.
this is like a volume. Like keep it moving. Some people are going to be like, oh, why is she sending me this? Who is she? I don't remember her. Right? That's fine. It's
Well,
okay.
you don't have
I'll
to
go.
see that reaction.
Right?
It's not like they're gonna
Right?
message me
You
and be like, "Ugh,
no.
you're a
It's
freak." Go.
fine.
Oh,
But the trick of the connecting part of it is someone is going to reply and be like, "Oh, that's so cool. Hey, have you heard of?" Right? So I think, you know, not I actually think Meg, like the transactional some of them are going to be transactional. It's okay. Like it's okay. We don't have to
yeah.
overthink it, right?
Okay.
But you will vibe with some people and right
Mhm.
and they'll vibe with you and you'll be able to build that connection off of them, right? You cannot force a connection with someone who doesn't want to have a connection to you. Like we should all like
Yes.
you gotta all learn that, right? So like just
Yeah.
keep it moving, right? Keep reaching out to new people. Don't let it deter you because that's like just because one person isn't interested, okay, great. There's lids for every pot.
Yeah. Of course. Okay. So I get these as well, but that kind of like jittery, nervous excitement before a networking event is something that I think a lot of people get, regardless of whether or not you are looking forward to or dreading that event.
100%.
Um, what is your advice for taking kind of pre-event jitters and making the most of these opportunities that you're about to have in front of you? What should people do if they're kind of focused on that like 2 to 3 minutes before the event starts and you're just like, this is awful.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think it also helps. I'm going to keep going back to this idea of like focusing on the people you already know. So like, bring a friend, right? It helps to like or know someone else is going to be there, right? So start like create friendly spaces for yourself. And again, it doesn't take long to get to know, right? You don't have to know 100 people in a room of 100 people. If you know
Mhm.
two, you're already like steps ahead of people who know zero, right? So like make sure you know a couple people or try to get connected to a couple people before you go. I do think it helps to have a goal in mind. Like that's, you don't have to be transactional about it, but it helps to know like why am I here? What am
What
I
am I trying to
doing
get out
here?
of this?
Right? What
Yeah.
am I trying to get out of this? And it helps if your goal is about knowledge and learning. What do I want to learn today? Who am I hoping to meet, or what kind of people am I hoping to meet, and what am I hoping to learn from them? So if you go in with a goal, I think it really helps.
I like that. Personally, y'all, especially if you are the person that like likes to have a buddy and you don't know anyone someplace, especially networking events, there will be other people that feel like this. You find another person who looks like they're not going to bite your head off if you go say hi, and I guarantee you, steal this if you want. You just walk up to them, you say, "Hi, I hate being at these things alone. Are you here by yourself too?" And 9 times out of 10, the person will say yes, and or I also hate being places alone. And then you've got a built-in buddy because you've bonded over the shared vulnerability of I don't know anybody else here, and these events are can be uncomfortable. Are you also uncomfortable? Great, let's be uncomfortable together. And now you are now not feeling quite so awkward because you've got somebody standing next to you, your new bestie Barbara or whatever. And that way you do have it kind of kicks that snowball into motion a little bit, and can feel a little less awkward. Plus then you're not standing there by yourself. So just a tip from me to you, y'all. Try that out.
I love it.
Okay, if can you tell us a time where a connection has like you've gotten to a genuine connection and an opportunity via this idea of networking? How has this worked out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a point at Path Forward where I met a lot of people, and I got introduced to a woman who is at the Innovation Foundation, which is part of Adecco's global foundation. And she invited me to be part of a monthly group of people talking about women's workforce participation globally, and kind of what the barriers were to women's workforce participation. And I, of course, jumped at it. I was like, that's yes, I can talk about that all day, an hour a month. Like, do you have more than that? Because I can talk about this for days on end. And it was great. And I was part of that group for a long time. And eventually, through that, got to meet the folks who were part of the US Foundation, which we then got to develop a relationship through Path Forward with them and get them to be part of our the things we were doing at Path Forward. So and that I think was a good example of it. You know, what I didn't know what this monthly group was going to, mean or do. It was just sort of an opportunity to get to know some people around the world. Another staffer got to speak at an event, a virtual event, but talking about things that were happening in Europe. So they're just kind of all things that spun off the back of that. But it was just like, yes, like just say yes, right? It's like was it Shonda who wrote that, right? Like the year of yes, like just say yes
Yes, the year.
to opportunities, right? Like sometimes just saying yes to opportunities, whether or not you know if they're going to lead anywhere specific. I think sometimes this is where the transactional part comes up, Meg, and partly it's we're efficient little worker bees, right? We want to just kind of like, oh, I
I
have a
got
goal, I
something
gotta do
done. It produced something, so that
right.
was valid effort, or
Right, I have a
yes,
goal. And
exactly.
sometimes just like letting yourself like, hey, I'm gonna hang out with these smart people once a month and see what happens. And, maybe some good things will happen on the other side of that.
I love it. Okay, now I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. I'm a girl's girl. I think you're probably a girl's girl too. Um, but there are plenty of people who do not grow up as a girl's girl or are not necessarily socialized to be so. So in your opinion, as women, how can we be each other's champions in the professional world as opposed to being competition or being threatened by each other? What are some of the ways that we as women can kind of help lift each other up as we're trying to in this networking space?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it helps to actually read up a little bit on how sort of sexism and misogyny work in the workplace. I think having some basic feminist theory can be super helpful for us as we're moving through the world and kind of seeing those things. I think look, it's tricky, right? Because we're also all people, and I also think it's not unhealthy for women to be competitive and even be competitive with each other, right? Like I think that's fine, right? We
Oh yeah,
are
my girl Chimamanda was right about that. All right,
right.
being
I think it's
competitive in the
fine.
workplace, and yes, I
Right.
there's not a problem with it. It's the problem is when you have to tear the other person down as opposed to we're both trying our best, right?
Right. So I think that's fine. And I actually think it's really unhelpful to try to suss out whether or not someone is treating you a certain way because you're whatever versus, whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think it's helpful for us to be noticing when other people are being treated in a way that is likely based on bias and discrimination. It's actually easier to see it happening outside of your, right? Like noticing it when it happens and calling it out is actually a really helpful way to be supportive of other people in the workforce, but particularly other women. When it's an interpersonal, it's real hard to know what's going on in that dynamic if you're in a dynamic with someone and trying to like defend yourself against that or try to like it's hard. I'm not saying it's just hard. I think it's more helpful to notice what's happening at the system level of like, hey, there's not a lot of women in leadership at this company. What's happening there? What could we do about that, right?
What's that about?
Right? Like, hey, this meeting, all the women get interrupted. I just counted all the women getting interrupted. Could we maybe talk about why that happens, right? So trying to lift things up to a system level and make changes there versus, but there's lots of ways to also just promote women too, right? Like when, someone in your network is doing something great, like blast that out on LinkedIn, right? Like, promote the people, other women that you work with and that you are in communion and in connection with can also be a great way to championing the cause.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Okay, we have, let's see, how much time do we have left? We got 3 minutes left. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we've got two questions left. If you could have any superpower to help you make connections, what would it be and how would you use it at a networking event?
Oh, goodness gracious. I would love to be just one of those people who can seamlessly move from conversation to conversation, like without any awkwardness. I don't think that'll ever happen, so I'm just gonna like let it go. But that I would just you know, like be one of those people who can very gracefully work a room and talk to everyone without seeming like
Oh,
she's trying to talk to everyone. Do you know what I mean? Like
wouldn't
that's
that be right? It's the effortlessness of it. That's the
yes.
trick. I'm telling you, because it's like somebody who gets paid to talk to people and go from question to question. It's the effortlessness that is that's the hard part there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I'd want a photographic memory. I know it's not actually a superpower. I know there's real people that have it. My grandfather had it. I'm very salty that I didn't inherit it. But I'd want a photographic memory because like I can remember names and faces, not always together. So I think
That'd be
it
great.
would be really nice to have those together.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my last question. I want to know for this for you. If you could choose any celebrity to be your networking buddy for a day, who would it be and why?
Okay. At the risk of giving a very political answer, I feel like we got to give it up to Kamala Harris this week. That woman
Okay.
spent 10 hours on the phone and like sewed everything up in 2 days. Like, if that is not networking, I don't know what, right? Like, and genuine
That's Black women get the
connection.
job done, first off. There's
Got the
that.
job
But oh
done,
my God.
right? Got the job done. And the genuine level of connection and like the enthusiasm that's happening on TikTok and Twitter and other spaces, like, it was masterful, right? Like what the launch of that campaign has been absolutely masterful. It's going to be studied. I'm convinced it will be studied for
Yeah.
years to come, right? In terms of like at least the first couple of days of like the launch of that, just absolutely masterful. And the reason I call it the networking piece of it is like she literally was reportedly on the phone for 10 hours on Sunday, and having all of those conversations, and clearly a lot of those are connections she's had for a long time, people she's known for a long time,
Work in
people
that
who,
network.
right, people who have been rivals, right, people that she has competed with, people that she has not always agreed with, and she, got the Dems to be in array instead of disarray,
Right.
as they often are, right? So I think there was something really masterful, and whether or not you actually like her politics, I think seeing what she did and how she did it, is, there was something real brilliant there. And it wasn't just her. Obviously, there were a lot of other people involved, but there was something really brilliant there.
I like that. As I was considering this question, I worked up one for myself. I think I gotta go Ted Lasso. I think
Mm,
the energy that he brings to introducing two people and then going and congratulations, y'all both just met a cool person.
yeah,
I love that. That is the energy that I strive for, and that is a person that cares. It cares about the person and cares about the story behind it, the why, not just how can we make the connections, blah blah blah. So
yeah,
that was what I think you're right. I think Kamala could definitely be a very excellent networking buddy for a day.
yes.
Okay, we are at time, but if people want to keep up with you, they want to see what you got going on, they want to follow you, where can they go?
So the best way is to subscribe to my Substack. It's tammymforman.substack.com. The subscription is free. There is a paid option, but it's a free subscription. I send out stuff pretty regularly. But I am Tammy M. Forman around the web. So if you're looking for me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, I kind of keep that handle across all the different socials. So feel free to connect with me wherever you want. But Substack is the place I'm trying to make my home. So that's the best place to connect with me.
Excellent. Thank you, Tammy. This has been wonderful. I always love getting to talk to you. I can't wait until we get to do this again.
Meg,
But thank you
same.
so much for taking time for us.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everybody.